Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be She's Not Yours, It's Just Your Turn. Well, if you've been surfing through the red pill community over the last few years, you've probably come across that. I see it occasionally on my videos, especially when I'm talking about a woman that belongs to the streets, basically. But I've got an email here from a guy, and it's just interesting because he had this big group of friends, and there was this woman that he started dating and he had a relationship with for about 8 months who was part of their friend group. And then things were good for about 2 to 3 months, and then he just became a total beta male, pushover, pleaser, and she just totally dominated him, lost respect for him. Eventually they broke up. She was on dating apps. They're still hooking up. And then he finds out that just this past week that she was also sleeping with one of his supposed close friends who was also part of their friend group. And so he confronted them both. And the friend was remorseful, but she was like, she really didn't care. And so he still, believe it or not, is thinking that he wants this woman back. And so it brings up a good point, because the reality is, and I've talked about this for years, and I see it all the time, it's like guys try to turn the hoe into a housewife. You can't make good wine from bad grapes, but guys try all the time. They come in with Captain Save-A-Hoe, I'm going to fix her, I'm going to save her, I'm going to be such a great guy, great boyfriend that she'll never leave me, she'll treat me great. And this is just delusional thinking, because as soon as the interest drops, when you're dating or in a relationship with somebody that has no integrity and their interest is low, their romantic interest is low in you, they'll just start talking to other guys and going out and having friendly cocktail hours with these guys. And then one thing leads to another, and oops, it just kind of happened. His dick ends up inside of her. And then the guys are surprised. But if you look at their history, especially when you look at their family, because the reality is kids are going to emulate whatever they learn from their parents in relationship. And so when kids that come from a family where there's lots of cheating and lying and disloyalty are going to be more inclined to cheat and be disloyal in their own relationships, because that's simply what they learned from their parents. Now, it doesn't mean that they're all going to turn out this way, but the majority of them are going to be inclined to be this way. And if you look at their actions, that's what happens. But also on the flip side of that, just to give an example, I've got friends that like to drink and party a lot, friends that go all the way back to high school. And some of them, their kids like to party just like they do. And others, some of their kids are like, well, I don't want to be like my parents, and I don't want to party that much. And so they're more reserved and they don't go full out. And so and then you got other people that grow up in crummy, broken homes, and they resolve to say, you know what, when I have a family someday, I'm just not going to present this kind of example. I want to be different. I want to end this dysfunctional cycle that just continually gets perpetuated from one generation to the next. So you see this in this particular woman. Despite all the crap that this woman has done to this guy, he's still thinking, I think I want her back. And if you are yourself have been in situations like this, or maybe you got friends, it's like 9 times out of 10, especially when their emotions are involved, because we make our decisions based on our emotions, and then we use logic and reason to justify it. It's like you're not going to talk these friends of yours out of this. It's like they got to hit the wall. They got to get burned so bad so many times that they finally start to recognize that, as the saying goes, I think it was Ayn Rand that said it, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. So I got a quote that I wrote for this topic, and then we'll go through his email, because it's a good one to learn from. It's a good one to learn what not to do. But, the other thing to consider is, like, you see this in movies and TV shows all the time, that people in these situations somehow magically have a great relationship come from this. And it may happen occasionally, 1 out of 10,000 may work out like they do in the movies, but the reality is in the real world is like there are certain women that belong to the streets that are great for fuck buddies, friends with benefits, open relationships, sex playmates, but they are not going to ever be capable of being exclusive and being loyal where you can actually trust them to talk, to communicate, to work things out like adults because they never learned it. They never had, and so they didn't learn it from their parents, and then there's no way for them to develop this value system. That's most people. There's always exceptions to the rules, but for the most part, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. So the quote says, if you are seeking a long-term monogamous exclusive relationship, you must properly vet your dating prospects to make sure they actually share the same goals and values, and most importantly, that they have the background and upbringing that instilled these values. You must also make sure their actions and past behavior match their values. Why? People from broken homes may wish to be exclusive and monogamous and aspire to this ideal, but their actions are simply not consistent with these values. Way too many people are driven by and only pay attention to their emotions. Because of this, they fail to properly vet the romantic prospects with disastrous consequences. You can't make good wine from bad grapes. Naive and delusional people will try, but smart and enlightened people will simply judge others by their actions, see reality as it is, and act accordingly. So he says, hey, coach, this girl and I were friends before dating because we are in the same friend group. Fast forward and we start dating. Things were amazing for 2 to 3 months, and we dated for 8 months total. We got along great and couldn't keep our hands off of each other and had so much in common. So in this stage, the honeymoon stage, you're driven by your emotions, you feel good, you make each other feel good, but the red flags are always there, but because the emotions are strong, they totally override your logic and reason, and you just ignore the red flags. Because it's once the honeymoon period goes by that people stop putting their best foot forward, and because of this, when they're no longer putting their best foot forward, maybe they take the other person for granted, maybe the red flags have really become obvious, maybe they're in a relationship with somebody that's just a terrible communicator. And when communication is not possible because the other person just simply refuses to communicate or is incapable of it, or they're passive aggressive, or maybe they're narcissistic personality disorder, or maybe they're just a narcissist, you just can't fix people like that, especially if they're unwilling to communicate. You want somebody that, especially as a guy dating a woman, you want a woman when you ask her what's going on, what she's thinking, what she's feeling, or what she means when she says something, if it doesn't just effortlessly flow out of her, you're going to have a hard time resolving differences and keeping things fun, easy, and effortless. And it's like when I look at my life now, the girlfriends that I wrote about in 3% Man and the close friends that I have, it's like we're always nice to each other and we get along great and we talk things out and we all tend to be easygoing and easy to get along with. Because life is just dealing with the rest of the world. Most people aren't like that. And there's a lot of feral humans that we all have to deal with in our business, in our lives, our careers, our personal life. And so it's very important the people that you allow into your inner circle that they share the same goals and values. If you have somebody that's just difficult, bringing all kinds of drama, it's just going to make your life way harder and make you hate your life. And if you hate your life and you start hating yourself, it's not a good thing. It'd take you down a dark path. He says, I was dominant at first, but because she's a very dominant female, I ended up becoming submissive and a pushover who let her walk all over me. And I did everything for her and was at her beck and call. So you, in essence, changed. And so if I was talking to her and asking her questions, that was probably one of the things she would say is that you were so different in the beginning and then you changed. And that's part of the problem is most guys don't understand how to be men. And so you fear losing a woman, and then you start becoming a pleaser because you do things that she says she wants, even though internally you might be feeling like, I don't really want to do this, but I want to make her happy, so I don't want to rock the boat. He says, then things changed. She told me that she lost her attraction for me. Well, yeah, you stopped acting like the guy she was attracted to in the beginning. And that it's because she is gray sexual. So, okay, I looked up gray sexual and throwing that out. And so, in other words, they're not really, it's kind of like a mixture of asexual and not really interested or that attracted. And all I have to say is, I know it's a term, you can look it up, but it sounds like a lot of fucking bullshit to me and an excuse. And the reality was they couldn't keep their hands off of each other in the beginning. And so now she doesn't want to have sex with him. And obviously he's noticed a difference. And so he asks her about it. And so she says, oh, I'm gray sexual, by the way. Oh, but a few months ago you couldn't keep your hands off me. And they couldn't keep their hands off of each other. But she's gray sexual now, and that's why she doesn't want to fuck me. So, but for the average guy, they hear that and they go, oh, well, yeah, that sounds logical. Let's see if we can fix that. And what it really is the excuse because she doesn't want to hurt your feelings. And it doesn't sound like you were really open to what she had to say anyways. And she was confused about what she wanted in a relationship. When a woman says she's confused, she's not confused. She just doesn't want to admit the fact that she doesn't really want to be in a relationship with you. He says, we continued our relationship. Sex was very few and far in between, and I continued to be a pushover, thinking that if I was, she would become attracted to me again. Well, that's what you see in TV all the time, especially the sitcoms. The men are just absolutely terrified of their wives or their girlfriends, and it's just absolutely disgusting. But obviously on TV, being terrified of your wife or girlfriend and complying with her unreasonable demands means that she'll love you and you'll be a great boyfriend and husband. But you do that in the real world, this is what happens. We finally called it quits. Otherwise, says we. Yeah. I'd say she probably dumped you finally. And she really wanted to stay friends and that maybe down the road we could get back together. So she's just letting you down easy. He says, I still continued to be submissive and do everything that she asked. I bought things for her and told her how much I loved her. Dude, you got to have some self-respect. I was barely getting anything back in return. Well, you want to match and mirror what you're getting from the other person. We would have sex here and there, but it was more because she had an itch to do so than actually wanting to have sex with me. So you got a few mercy fucks out of it. That's really emasculating. But for some guys, this thirst is real. She was on Tinder and always talking to these other guys while telling me we could hopefully work another time. Okay. What she's really saying is, hey, thanks for the free dick until I find you a replacement. So this is really kind of more ideally suited to what she's ideally suited for, which is kind of casual hookup, friends with benefits. Make sure you wear a raincoat with a woman like this, because you ain't the only one she's hooking up with. Last week, I found out that she slept with one of my closest friends a couple of days prior. I confronted them. Oh, wait, hold on. She belongs in the streets. It was not obvious by now. Come on. I confronted them in front of the whole friend group. My buddy owned up to what had happened and sincerely apologized to me while making it clear it meant nothing to him and that he regrets it and wished it never happened. What a load of bullshit. If you believe that, I got a bridge I can sell you. I got some oceanfront property in the swamp you'll just love. Sure. Oh, it meant nothing. Sure. Your friend's probably just like you, hoping that he's going to get hers. Just like the title says, it's not. In this particular case, that totally applies. She's not yours, it's just your turn. These kinds of women, this is totally accurate for. The problem where the red pill community has is that these guys, they hear that and the shit becomes their religion. And then they paint all women with this broad brush that they're all the same. She's not yours, it's just your turn. Pump and dump. Women are horrible. And they're not. But when you believe that and you think that way, you're going to continually attract the same kind of women into your life. And so from their perspective, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm all about self-reliance. Being man enough to admit that in this particular case, hey, you screwed up. You tried turning a hoe into a housewife. But it is what it is. These are the kinds of things that you learn from. And that's why the vetting process is so important. But unfortunately, because the reality is most of us don't meet people that we really like, we really connect with, and who feel the same way. And so when it does happen, we want to admit that finally the waiting is over. The right person has finally walked into our lives. God has finally smiled on us today. And everything's going to be rainbows and unicorns and babies for the rest of our lives. And the reality is that's just simply not accurate. But people want the fantasy. They want it to be true. And so they look past all these things. And you'll see this guy still, despite all this shit, he's still thinking, I still want to get back together with her. He says, my ex, on the other hand, told me she doesn't regret it and isn't sorry about it. Well, in this case, she's trying to get the point across to you is like, dude, you need to move on. Since I found out she's been a complete bitch to me, she doesn't respect you. Women can't love men they don't respect because you didn't stand up for yourself. You allowed her to walk all over you, so she completely lost all respect for you as a man and attraction. She told me to grow up and move on. You should see, that's like the first time she's really been honest and trying to really tell you what's really going on. He says, this is what I told her. Then we can no longer be friends. I'm not going to be put on the sideline and watch someone else play the game I want to play. Dude, come on, man. Have some self-respect. You're still seeking her attention and validation. She just totally burned you in your friend group, and yet you're still begging for her approval. Plus, for my emotional and mental health, I cannot be friends with you. If our paths cross again and you end up wanting to try again between us, then great. Come on, man. She fucking belongs to the streets. But other than that, I'm not going to be a part of your life. I hope you have an amazing life and do something special with it. I'm still always here for you if you seriously need someone. Come on, man. Look at all the contradictory statements here. This is why she's absolutely repulsed by you. She's a hoe anyways, but you're not doing yourself any favors. Please pay attention to me, Your Highness, and give me another shot. But I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. But call me if you need anything. That's like calling somebody going, hey, I just want you to know I'm never going to call you again. Click. I just want to know I'm serious about never calling or texting you again. You're never going to hear from me again. Sure, buddy. Since then, it's been a couple of days since I've spoken to her, and I haven't tried to reach out. I would never call or text her again for any reason. A friend suggested your videos after this happened, and I've been binge watching them since. Well, how about you start reading the book? It's free to read at understandingrelationships.com. Just subscribe to the email newsletter. You got to learn the fundamentals. If you're cherry picking, not much is really going to help you because the videos are based on the assumption that you actually know the fundamentals in the book. Because you're half-assing it, you're being lazy. And that is not going to help you have sustainable success. Because that's what you're looking for, sustainable success. But you got to have good grapes. You cannot make good wine from these bad grapes. Why? Because she belongs to the streets. You're fishing out of the sewer, my man. And obviously you need to look at your peer group because if you're in essence sharing women in your peer group with other dudes, whether you realize it or not. If you stay involved in this friend group, well, you're inviting more because obviously these kinds of women are part of your friend group. If you stay involved with them, guess what? You're telling the universe, thanks, may I have another. Please send me more women like this. Reflecting on the relationship, I could see that I was being tested by her and that I didn't stand up for myself and assert my dominance. Yeah, but it really didn't matter because she belongs to the street. She's a whore anyways. She continued to test me after she lost her attraction in hopes that I would finally stand up for myself and be the man she wanted me to be. Well, these again, you marry a woman like this, you get into a relationship with her, you might find out 10, 20 years down the road that half your kids aren't even yours because she's fucking, anytime you act like a bitch, she just goes and fucks somebody else and whoops, slip one past the goalie. I've had lots of phone sessions over the years with guys that have had that unfortunate experience. And the way the laws are in some states, down the road, you find out the kid's not even yours. State doesn't care. You still got to pay that alimony and child support for a child that wasn't yours. That's why it's so important to vet your dating prospects properly. But unfortunately, most people don't. And then crying that all women are the same and saying all women are like this absolves yourself from any personal responsibility for your own shitty vetting procedures and your failure to properly pre-qualify the women, and obviously in this case the peer group that you spend your time with. You're obviously hanging out with a group of people that have zero integrity. You attract how you act. And so if I were you, I would be doing some real self-examination on the people that you're spending your time with. And like I said, if I were you, I'd be reading 3% Man backwards and forwards to learn the fundamentals. Get back out there, start meeting and dating other women, and you got to find out what their backgrounds are like. And it's like when you go out with enough women, you see that at some point they're all going to tell you about their past. And let them tell you about their past, because that's what you're going to need to know in order to vet them. Women just volunteer this. If you're doing what's in 3% Man, you will be told everything you need to know, assuming she's a normal, happy, healthy woman. Bad women, my book brings out the best and the worst really fast. And it brings out the best and the best women really fast as well, so you can know what you're dealing with. But again, that's why you got to read the book. There's no shortcuts to success. I wish there was. I wish I could download all this information into your brain like they did in the movie The Matrix, but that's not how things work in the real world. In the real world, you retain 8 to 10% of what you watch and read and see each time you watch, read, and see it. That's why you got to go through it 10 to 15 times and know it backwards and forwards, so you don't make these colossal mistakes and waste 8 months of your life getting burned by a woman who belongs to the streets, who you should have just casually hooked up with and never had anything to do with. Now, if I were you, and if you're a lunatic and you still want to heat up these leftovers, you're never going to call or text her again for any reason. And if she does reach out, invite her over, hang out, have fun, hook up at your house, make some dinner together, invite her over for drinks. I'd never take her out on dates. Treat her like a fuck buddy. Fuck buddies don't get dates, and you don't spend money on them. And if she doesn't like that, say, yeah, give me a call in a couple weeks, and maybe I'll be up for meeting you out then. I'd be following what's in 7 Principles to Get an Expert, but again, she's a fuck buddy. That's it. Nothing more. But if you think you're going to change her or fix her or save her, you are in for a lot of pain down the road. Ignore that advice at your own peril. So if you've got a question or a challenge in your personal or your professional life and you'd like to get my help, go to understandingrelationships.com, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book a coaching session with yours truly. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.